The little things that are important, Jimmy. It's the little things that get you caught.
Alright everybody, I am Kevin from The Real Movie Guys, and you are watching The Real Review, a series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies. On today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at The Little Things. Kern County Deputy Sheriff Joe Deke, Deacon, is sent to Los Angeles for what should have been a quick evidence-gathering assignment. Instead, he becomes embroiled in the search for a killer who is terrorizing the city. Leading the hunt, LA Sheriff Department Sergeant Jim Baxter, impressed with Deke's cop instincts, unofficially engages his help. But as they track the killer, Baxter is aware that the investigation is dredging up echoes of Deke's past, uncovering disturbing secrets that could threaten more than this case. Sometimes movies sound really good on paper. Imagine a gritty 90s style crime drama starring Denzel Washington and Rami Malek, one haunted by his past and another the naive go-getter teaming up to track down and nail suspicious Jared Leto, playing a skeezy over-the-top character. All this goes on while making you question the black, white, and gray areas of what we interpret as justice. Sounds amazing, right? Too bad The Little Things is never able to capitalize on that premise, and what we get is an extremely lackluster, boring, and worst of all, generic crime story. Telling a familiar story doesn't have to be a bad thing. After all, the theory is that there are only 7 original stories that can be told in existence. The burden of this comes with the direction and overall narrative to make the story investable and interesting. I think The Little Things really wanted to be thought-provoking and tell this tale about obstacles detectives face with the job of trying to find a killer and the burden it weighs on them. The problem is they just don't know how to tell the story cohesively and make it interesting. Many times throughout the movie, I was just plain bored, especially the first hour. In the vast amount of time, I felt zero connection to either character's perspective since they both felt so muddled. The character Deke is never given enough time to convince us on the impact of his traumatic past and how that's affecting and driving him every day, while Baxter is also never convincing on why he goes from disliking Deke to suddenly becoming his protege and hanging on his every word. The movie needs this team up to make sense and for us to be invested, and it just never happens. Once we hit the 2-hour mark, we just suddenly have a suspect out of almost nowhere in Albert Sparma. It's weird that even though this film is 2 hours long, it still feels like they didn't have enough time to tell a complete narrative, having far too many stop and go moments without giving them enough time to make an impact. Have you ever heard the expression, "I could do that in my sleep"? It looks like the cast of this movie really took that phrase to heart because Denzel Washington and Rami Malek were just really lackluster, which pains me incredibly to say. From 2 such charismatic actors, I really expected much more emotional investment. Denzel playing the haunted Deke just never conveyed the true pain I needed to care about his character's journey. I understand that Denzel is just trying to play him more quiet and reserved, but when emotional moments come, I just never quite feel it, especially when pieces of his backstory are revealed which are integral to the plot. I hate to say it, but the actor just came across disinterested with the material. Rami Malek's performance as Jim Baxter may just be that much more disconnected than Denzel's. Every scene with him just feels off. It felt like he was trying so hard to play the character rather than be the character. Most of his mannerisms come off as constantly looking confused and disconnected. His dialogue delivery is much more the same.
You want to clear your conscience? That's your problem. You gotta solve my case to solve yours. Who am I to moan? But you piss on my leg and call it rain. We're through.
I know he has the ability, but I think the direction of him being the cool and cold disconnected detective that was slowly becoming excessive just didn't translate. Now we get to Jared Leto, who plays the suspected killer Albert Sparma. There was part of me at first who really thought his performance was going to save this thing, but in the end, it felt like he was just looking for an excuse to play a limping, pot-bellied, and downright trashy sleazebag. Jared Leto is famous for his character acting roster of characters, but this performance was just out of place. He came across so over the top in this gritty and grounded film that I couldn't take him seriously. I would say his performance came off more as a parody than anything else.
Holy guacamole. Meeny, miny, miny, mo. Catch a dead girl by her dog.
Scaling it back a bit, and I think making him a longer focus of the film, really could have turned out something great. One minor issue I found in this movie was also its editing. In a dramatic thriller like this, most cinematographers would use more lingering shots, resulting in a slower pace, and really allowing the audience to take in the scene. This film, however, goes for a more frantic pace, using an abundance of quick cuts, zooming in on every facial reaction and item we need to see without giving the scene a chance to breathe. This is most apparent in the finale of the film. Interesting events are taking place, but I never felt like I was given the chance to absorb the actual scene as a compliment to the dialogue. I've spent most of this review complaining about the things I thought were weak or ineffective, but this film does manage to do some things well. The mood is consistently dark and eerie as a result of excellent lighting. This movie really makes use of hiding things in darkness and using minimal light when appropriate to really set a somber mood. When the investigation in the film really begins to ramp up, the movie actually has some really on-point moments of building suspense. The cat and mouse nature of the investigation starts to mold that pit in your stomach when a character is questioned or caught off guard. Its greatest strength, though, would have to be its dedication to putting you into the shoes of what a detective on a murder case would face. Many times throughout an investigation, detectives have to deal with the results of their decisions, and I can't imagine that the psychological toll it can take must be excruciating. The movie really leans in hard with how obsession, even with its best intentions, can be a dangerous path should you let one terrible mistake define you and haunt you forever. While this movie never really tells you what the right answer is, it offers you a scenario that you are either on board for or wholeheartedly disagree. The ending is where I think the audience will be most divided with this film. I think the ending is serviceable to the overall theme of this film, even though an argument could be made that there is no closure to the plot. I think that's kind of the point. Some questions are just left with answers in a gray area. The biggest downside of all this is that the build up to this feels rushed, and with the emotional depth this movie has been lacking the entire film, it can come across as hollow and to some extent anticlimactic. Every movie to some extent has potential, and with so many films fighting for our attention, generic just isn't enough. Even what The Little Things does successfully, I would consider that mediocre to acceptable at best. Unfortunately, it's the overall empty feeling this movie leaves me with that renders the whole film ineffective, which leads me to my final score. I'm going to give The Little Things a D.
Why not?
Son of a bitch. Your dick is as hard as Chinese arithmetic.
With three amazing actors and an intriguing moral conflict, it's just a wonder why they were unable to put the puzzle of this film together. Maybe instead of being concerned with just the little pieces, this film should have given the larger ones more attention. If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.